For most of my life, I didn't know you could say certain things out loud. I didn't know you could talk openly about doubt, about confusion, about feeling different, about feeling emotionally heavy, about questioning yourself. I thought those were the things you carried quietly, so I carried them for years. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Clay Johnson. I leverage my own life experiences to connect with others on matters of the heart through inspiring stories and moving discussions. And today, I want to talk about where all of this comes from, because sometimes I wonder if people listen and think, how does one person have this many thoughts, this many reflections? The truth is, I've always had them. I just didn't always say them. Growing up, I felt confused at times, different, emotionally heavy in a way I couldn't explain. I had a lot going on internally. Questions about who I was, about whether I was enough, about whether I belonged. But I didn't see many examples of people speaking about those things openly. Not in my environment, not in the culture I grew up in. There wasn't language for it. So I assumed it wasn't normal to say it out loud. I assumed it was something you figured out privately. Or not at all. Some of it went into journals over the years, but most of it stayed bottled up. And when you bottle things up long enough, they don't disappear. They just get heavier. There were seasons in my life where I felt like I was the only one experiencing this level of internal dialogue. Like everyone else seemed more certain, more straightforward, less complicated. And I quietly admired people who could speak their truth openly. Which brings me to Oprah. For those of you outside of the United States, Oprah Winfrey is one of the most influential talk show hosts in American history. For decades, she interviewed people about their lives, their struggles, their trauma, their growth, in a way that felt deeply human and emotionally honest. She normalized talking about things people used to whisper about, and I was drawn to that. In my late 20s, I went to see her talk show 3 times. 3. I didn't fully understand at the time why I felt so compelled to be there, but looking back, I think I do. She was doing something I didn't know I was allowed to do. She was saying things out loud, and the audience wasn't recoiling. They were leaning in. That mattered, because somewhere inside me was a person who had been holding a lot in. I didn't start this podcast because I suddenly became reflective. I've always been reflective. I didn't start this podcast because I suddenly had depth. The depth was always there. I started it because I finally gave myself permission. Permission to say the thing. Permission to admit doubt. Permission to talk about shame. Permission to talk about not feeling enough. Permission to talk about fear. Permission to talk about growth in real time. For years, I thought it wasn't normal to speak about these things openly. I thought strength meant composure. I thought maturity meant quiet processing. I thought being capable meant keeping it together. But I've learned something. Strength can also look like articulation. Maturity can look like reflection. And capability can coexist with vulnerability. The podcast became a container, a place where the bottled up thoughts could breathe. And something interesting happened when I started speaking them. They felt lighter, not because they disappeared, but because they weren't isolated anymore. And maybe that's what I needed all along. Not the answers, connection. Because the biggest lie I believed growing up was this: I must be the only one thinking this way, the only one questioning this much. The only one feeling this deeply. And that lie keeps people silent. But the more I speak and the more messages I receive, the more I realize something simple and profound. We are rarely the only one. We are just the first one in the room to say it. If you've ever felt confused by your own depth, if you've ever felt different because you think too much, reflect too much, feel too much, there is nothing wrong with you. You're not dramatic. You're not broken. You're not alone. Maybe you just haven't seen enough examples of it being spoken out loud. I didn't know you could say these things out loud. Now I do. And I'm not going back to carrying it alone. If this podcast resonates with you, it's probably because you've been carrying some things too. You don't have to shout them. You don't have to perform them. But you are allowed to say them out loud. Thank you for listening. And if this episode felt personal, Share it with someone who might still believe they're the only one thinking the thoughts they think. They're not. Until next time, thank you.